the hand, companies are trying to survive and ensure they will be ready to remain sustainable once things come to normal. More than ever, this interaction and dialogue between governments and companies has been so necessary, and we are very pleased to have you here, Minister. Back in January, we went to your building, to the offices of the Beis in London, and in those days our only preoccupation was Brexit. That was back in January, and we had 80 Spanish companies going for the first time ever to Beis, and what we had a very interactive and productive seminar on Brexit, and the plan was to have more seminars on Brexit for Spanish companies. Spanish companies represent the 7th largest investor in the United Kingdom, and we are extremely keen with the Spanish Chamber of Commerce to facilitate this dialogue and interaction between Her Majesty's government and Spanish investment. The next 6 months will be shaped by COVID-19 and by Brexit. So we will be, I'm assuming, Minister, we will be back. We will be trying to interact with yourselves and the Department for International Trade, with whom we have an excellent relationship as well, because we think the more certainty and the more dialogue with the Spanish companies, the better. Without further ado, I will hand over to the Treasurer of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much, Eduardo. Thank you very much, Minister. Today we have the honor and the pleasure to have with us an individual whose personal and professional history and his political career would each of them be merit enough to be addressing us today. Luckily, we have a person who embodies these two faces. Nadhim Zahawi is the Member of Parliament for Stratford-on-Avon since 2010, and he's also Minister of Business and Industry at the Beis Department. He was born in Baghdad to Kurdish parents. His family had to migrate to the UK under the threat of persecution from Saddam Hussein's regime when he was only 9 years old. He grew up in Sussex and went to study at University College London, where he graduated in chemical engineering. Professionally, he was a European marketing director of Smith & Brooks, the licensed children merchandise supplier, before, in the year 2000, being one of the co-founders of YouGov, the market research company known especially for its political polling and for having made the MRP household concept. And he was CEO of the company until 2010, when he became a member of parliament for his current constituency. Politically, he had been quite engaged before. He had been a councillor at Wandsworth Council, not far from where I am, for 12 years, since '94 until 2006. Since entering Parliament, he has served at the Foreign Affairs Select Committee, at the Business Innovations and Skills Select Committee, and as well as been appointed by Prime Minister Cameron to his policy board and as apprenticeship advisor. In January 18, he entered government as Parliamentary Undersecretary of State at the Education Department in the May administration, moving to his current role at Beis at the beginning of the Long Johnson premiership. So thank you very much, Mr. Zahawi, and we are very honored to have you. And without further ado, the virtual floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I hope everyone can hear me clearly. I want to first thank you, Eduardo and Nacho, and the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK for inviting me to speak at this virtual breakfast meeting. The UK-Spain trading relationship is a long-standing and very valuable one for both countries, and I know how active the Chamber is in ensuring those links continue to thrive. I'm really delighted to be with you this morning to speak about the UK's approach to our long-term relationship with the EU and what that might mean for UK-Spanish trade and investment. And inevitably, I will touch on the effects of COVID-19 and how we together, Spain and the United Kingdom governments and business, can secure a swift economic recovery, because of course this is about lives, but also it's about livelihoods. I think we can safely say we long for the days of 2019, which you mentioned in your introductory remarks coming to the department. 2019 was a groundbreaking year for the bilateral trade relationship between the UK and Spain. Last year, the flow of UK investment into Spain reached, I think, something like 4.9, almost 5 billion euros, 4.9 billion euros. This meant that the UK overtook the United States as Spain's largest foreign investor, with the UK already top of the list of flows of Spanish investment abroad. On the trade side, last year, UK exports of goods to Spain increased by 6% year on year, and Spanish exports of goods to the United Kingdom increased by almost the same amount, 5.8% year on year. I don't need to tell anyone on this call how positive those sorts of bilateral trade numbers and growth are, and how that kind of trading relationship can rebuild the foundations of economies that have been shaken, because they have been shaken. One has to be honest about this. Coronavirus is the biggest challenge either of our countries has faced in decades, and we are not alone. Our two nations are among the worst affected by the virus, and the human toll has been truly devastating. We are just now beginning to recover and take the steps to restore our economies. We are surveying the economy and taking very cautious steps towards the re-establishment of normal business. And Spain is now gradually, of course, emerging from its own strict lockdown phase. Different parts of the country can progress towards de-escalation at different speeds and in line with our own plan. The Spanish government stands ready to, of course, reintroduce restrictions if the R number begins to tick back up again. As you know, in the UK, the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, has already announced a host of measures to help businesses at this time, with £330 billion worth of government-backed and guaranteed loans to support business firms, large and small, across the United Kingdom. Just to give you some idea of the numbers, so far we've issued 33,812, I think, coronavirus business interruption loans. We call them C-bills. Many of you on this call will know what I'm talking about. So that's 33,812 issued. That's providing £5.5 billion worth of finance. This has increased by one third in 1 week. This is in addition, of course, to covering the cost of statutory sick pay and the furlough scheme that have now been extended to October. We have taken decisive, I think, and unprecedented. I have a 7-year-old daughter, and her first day back at virtual school a few weeks ago, they learned in their English class the word unprecedented. This truly is unprecedented action to keep businesses afloat. Our measures are really working, with over 700,000 grants and loans issued to business, over 500,000 businesses registered for furlough, and hundreds of thousands getting relief on business rates and VAT, of course. Now, we must all begin to recover and eventually rebuild our way of life. However, as we do so, I think it is absolutely vital that we avoid the risk of a second peak that can overwhelm our health service. And of course, I think would be existential if we had to go back to business and lock down again. If we stay the course, act prudently, and take the right steps to restore businesses, I'm confident that the end of 2020 will see an economic recovery well underway in the UK, in Spain, and across Europe. The end of the year is also an important date, as you all will know, on the other issue that I've been asked to speak to you about today, the end of the transition period after the UK's departure from the EU. Excuse me. Whilst this will be the start of the UK's new life as a sovereign nation independent of the EU, we want to continue to enjoy a very close trading relationship with the EU and all its member states based on friendly cooperation between sovereign equals, and of course centered very much at the heart of it is free trade. I will briefly describe how the UK aims to achieve this. We are looking for a suite of agreements with the EU, the main element of which is a comprehensive free trade agreement covering substantially all trade. The proposals we have outlined are grounded in precedent and align with the parameters for our future relationship as agreed in the political declaration. This is a detailed and reasonable package that builds on the EU's own offer of a Canada-style deal. Significant provisions on trade in services and investment are, I think, an essential component of a comprehensive FTA. We want to see measures to minimize barriers to the cross-border supply of services and investment on the basis of commitments like those in the EU-Canada FTA. In areas of key interest, such as professional and business services, there may be scope to go beyond these commitments. The third formal round of the negotiations took place last week, although little progress was made on the outstanding issues between us. The EU's insistence on including proposals that would effectively bind the UK to EU laws remains a fundamental roadblock, as we will not conclude an agreement on that basis. And we've made that very, very clear. In order to facilitate further discussion for the next round that begins on the 1st of June, we are this week making public all the UK draft legal text so that EU member states like Spain and others and any interested observers can see our approach in detail. At the end of the year, the UK will be leaving the single market and the customs union. We agree and accept that this comes with consequences for market access for both sides. Businesses will need to prepare for life outside both at the end of 2020, and many have already done so. I speak to them all the time. There will be new processes that exporters and importers will have to comply with, whether we reach an agreement or not. In both cases, there will be new processes. The government will make sure businesses have access to the latest guidance on gov.uk to help them understand what they need to do to prepare for the end of the transition period. Businesses should register for email updates on new guidelines and new tools, such as the Trade Checker tool. Our embassy in Madrid is working with my department and with industry associations in Spain to provide detail on the UK's positions in respect of particular sectors. A webinar on the auto sector is planned with ANFAC and with Senauto, S-E-R-N-A-U-T-O, CERN Auto, as well as further seminars on chemical, pharma, and other sectors. those looking to participate in those sectoral discussions and sessions can follow up with my staff at Beis or our embassy in Madrid for the arrangements. Look, even though the UK has left the EU, we share common values and have much, much to build on. The UK shares with Spain a long history as a nation of free traders. Flows of people and trade and investment bind us, and we hope that globally minded partners such as yourselves will speak equally forcefully in support of a return to a rules-based order. The critical role Spain played in the Mercosur and the Japan negotiations shows the clout, the real clout you can have in these matters. In terms of travel, Spain and the UK are the world's largest country pair, with over 37 million two-way passengers each year. We intend to discuss mobility arrangements in a defined number of areas as part of the FTA negotiations. For example, provisions to allow business professionals to move to provide services. As you all know, and much of your investments attests to this, trade in services between the UK and the EU is absolutely critical and is facilitated by the ability of businesses to send their employees across borders quickly and easily. That is why we are prepared to consider taking commitments on Mode 4, the temporary entry and stay of business people that could build on the EU's existing trade agreements with Canada and Japan. This would need to be, of course, on a reciprocal basis and in line with the UK's future immigration system. These arrangements would provide, I think, legal certainty for businesses moving employees between the UK and the EU, as well as those, of course, undertaking cross-border service provision. This is our goal, and one that will be, to, I think, the mutual benefit of the UK and EU business. This movement of people back and forth is part of our two nations' industrial DNA as well. And I think we can both, I hope, be forceful advocates for this. We are both proud Airbus nations, building plane wings in the UK and the horizontal stabilizers in Spain. This and so many other examples provide the high value jobs and economy-wide benefits of a high technology industry. Now, looking ahead, we recognize the immense challenge facing both our countries. As we recover, the decisions we make today will either lay the foundations for sound, sustainable, and inclusive growth, or lock in polluting emissions for decades, and in doing so, make our society, we all think, and the planet certainly much more vulnerable. Spain stepped in to host COP25, and when the current crisis has passed, the UK will host COP26 in 2021. Spain and the UK should, I think, continue to lead the way internationally for increased climate ambition in light of COVID-19, championing a clean, resilient, and inclusive recovery that is guided by the Paris Agreement. Spanish and British companies together are really well placed to seize the job growth and economic opportunities that a decarbonized recovery will present. I always remind colleagues in Parliament and, of course, in my own department, that it's not just good for the environment, it's good business. We surely face significant challenges this year, and the world we expect to see in the future may look very different in a number of respects. One of those is that the UK will be a fully independent nation. But we also know that some things will continue, such as the strong trade flows and business relationship between our two countries, the importance of fora, such as the Chamber, for providing a channel of communication between, and most importantly, the people-to-people links that underpin the relationship between our two countries, is absolutely critical. And I thank you for all the work you're doing. I know you're inviting other ministers to come and speak at the chamber, which is absolutely brilliant, I have to say. Thank you for having me this morning. Very happy to take questions. Delighted to be here.
Thank you very much, Minister. It has been a most insightful speech. And now we will give way to the Q&A session. Here you can see the 3 ways that you can ask questions through the platform in the Zoom app, by email at that address, or by WhatsApp to the number reflected in the slide. The only request is that, well, since we have the Stratford MP, we can quote Polonius in Hamlet saying that brevity is the soul of wit. So with much further ado, let me go into the first question. Albert Cole from Sabadell has submitted one question. The press has recently linked the approval of a future UK-US deal by US Congress, including Speaker Pelosi, to an adequate safeguarding of the 1998 peace agreement in Northern Ireland as interpreted by Ireland. This, he states, could be at odds with recent declarations by the PM in regards to the potential functioning of a border between Ireland and Northern Ireland. What does it say about the need to coordinate the EU trade deal and the EU trade deal in both timing and content?
Thank you very much for that question. We are moving ahead with a number of trade deals, as well as the EU FTA and our negotiations there. The United States is a very important trading partner with us, and I think there's enough goodwill on both sides to want to conclude a free trade agreement. I think the Prime Minister and his whole government has always, and is always on record as saying that the Stormont agreement, the Good Friday agreement, will absolutely be respected, and of course, anything that can undermine that will not be acceptable to the United Kingdom. So I don't see us having a problem there. There is clearly some what I would call operational challenges that remain, and I know the Northern Ireland Secretary Brandon Lewis and the negotiating team are working through that, but in no way would we enter any agreement, whether with Europe or otherwise, that would undermine that. And so I think I want that message to be heard loud and clear in this fora, as well as in internationally and elsewhere. I spend a lot of time talking to my colleagues in the United States. The Energy Secretary in America has become a good friend because I cover energy, of course, and nuclear, and so does he. So I think I'm very optimistic that we will be in a position. Look, we have entered this negotiation wanting to help the EU get to a place where they don't have to do any bespoke work on the agreement, whilst also respecting, of course, that we have a land border with the EU as well. And we have made it very clear that we want to conclude agreements with the United States, with Japan, with New Zealand, with Australia, and of course, Asia and the rest of the world as well. And we will make sure that happens. It is in our DNA. That is what we are, I think, like you in Spain are very good at doing. So I don't see actually us having a problem. The one thing I would sort of just counsel against is sometimes there are moments in any negotiation, and many people on this call today will understand this because you are business people, where there is posturing, taking of positions, and of course a lot of rhetoric, and that is played out in the media and elsewhere. But ultimately, I think a deal is eminently doable with the EU and, of course, with other countries around the world.
Thank you very much. And let us now pass on the word to Juan Carlos Machuca, that should be with us at any second. So, Juan Carlos, can you hear us? Juan Carlos, sorry. No, we cannot hear you.
Unmute yourself.
No, we cannot hear you. Okay, and let's pass on to the next question, and the next question comes from Pierre Shingleton from Indra Minsight. 1 second, let me connect him. Okay. Pierce, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Pierce, for joining us.
Excellent. Minister Zahawi, real pleasure to have you with us this morning. Thank you very much. So my question is, prior to COVID-19 really starting to impact our economies, the government made the ambitious goal of concluding the future negotiations relating to our trading relationship with the EU within the transition period by the end of this year. Given the priority we must give to addressing COVID-19 and the amount of bandwidth that will consume, would it not make sense to extend the transition period in order to be able to prioritize the economic recovery following COVID-19?
Thank you, Piers. Look, the short answer is actually we can do both, and we can do them both well. Why? One, because actually, and you'll see it, I mentioned in my earlier remarks, that we will be publishing all the legal text so that other member states and interested parties can actually see the level of work that's already gone in. Two, we have deliberately, and I think rightly so, not asked the EU for any bespoke type of deal that they've never done before, hence why I was mentioning building on the Canada or Japan agreements. Because the moment you will understand this, or the lawyers amongst you here, I'm not, I'm a chemical engineer, as you heard earlier, will understand is the moment you start doing bespoke deals or asking for bespoke negotiations, that's where delays can occur, because it's never been done before, and therefore, you know, the sort of the legal minds have to try and work out, you know, have you addressed everything, you know, where are the loopholes that could emerge. We're not doing any of that. We deliberately wanted the EU to be able to look at the whole deal and say, this is all stuff that they've done before somewhere else in the world. And so I think it's eminently doable. It's the right thing, I think, to do, because we need to move forward. The EU itself will be thinking about the economic recovery and what. So just 10 seconds on this. You know, we went into this emergency in the sort of face of a global pandemic emergency, and all of our interventions were about wrapping our arms around the economy to protect jobs and of course try and keep the economy and protect the economy as much as we can, which is why furlough scheme has been so successful, C-bills, CL bills, the Bank of England corporate finance scheme, and so on. All of those interventions have to be reviewed, and you've seen the first one with Rishi Sunak actually extending furlough and making it more flexible. Why? Because the profile of a recovery looks very different to the profile of a shutdown when you're asking businesses to close their business. As they come back, there'll be lag time for training, for rebuilding their order book, So it's a very different profile. And the final chapter of that is then the stimulus that you want to inject into an economy that allows it to recover as robustly as possible. All of that, the EU will also be looking to do. And the worst place to be is to be sort of, in the middle of that, when we should have actually concluded a deal, let the EU get on with their recovery strategy and what they need to do in terms of resourcing that strategy. And we can get on with our recovery. So I think the two things actually work much better together if we can conclude this by the end of the year, because otherwise it could become unbelievably difficult, dare I say messy, if we don't.
Okay, thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you very much. We have now some questions also related to the agreement and to the negotiations. Juan Carlos Machuca from RIA asks if you are optimistic or pessimistic on the negotiation, and it's an agreement on the last minute of the last hour again. Darius Mogabar from Islam asked if could the government envisage an extension to the transition period. I would add maybe now with the June framework, or maybe a last minute thing. And then we have some other additional questions on this. Should a Spanish company assume that from January 1st will be trading on WTO terms, or what type of agreement are you expecting to have?
So a lot there to unpack, but I'll have a go at all of that now. So, as I was saying earlier to peers, I think I spent more years being a businessman than I have been a member of parliament and a minister. And you will all know that in any negotiation, there will be moments where there will be very tough negotiation. But as long as the goodwill is there from both sides, I think we can conclude a deal. So I am still an optimist, albeit there needs to be some significant movement on some fundamental issues. But I still think if both sides have the will, we can get there. I also think that actually it's the right thing to do, especially in light of COVID-19, because as I said in my earlier answer to peers, we are designing as we speak the strategy for the recovery and looking at the fiscal stimulus, non-fiscal stimulus that we would need to inject in our economy. The EU are doing the same thing. For us to be still stuck in the middle of that because we haven't actually concluded and left by December, I think could be very, very messy for both sides, certainly for us in the UK, because we want to be able to make those decisions quickly for the sake of the economy and the well-being of the businesses in the United Kingdom. So I think it is absolutely doable. Do I think there will be more moments of frustration or moments of posturing? There certainly will be in any negotiation. That lives with you until there is no deal until you conclude the deal. So I think we will continue. We have tried to be, and we will continue to be, as transparent as we can make this. That's why we're publishing the legal text, so any observer can see, especially the member states like Spain, can see the UK position very clearly, and therefore interrogate it and think about it, and hopefully reach the conclusion that we have reached, which is actually we're not asking for things that are unreasonable. Imagine a world where we were asking the EU to have to be locked into UK or English law. That just would be unthinkable. And so I think as long as we're treated fairly and in a way that is transparent, I think we can do a deal.
Thank you very much, Minister. Now we are having our next question from Bruno Poggi from Startup Lipside. Bruno, here you are. We can see it a bit turn around, but Now we see you, right? So please
Good morning,
go ahead.
Nacho.
Thank you.
Hello, and good morning, Mr. Zahawi. I hope you hear me well.
I do. Good morning, Bruno.
From your beloved Wandsworth Borough. My question refers to the tech space in particular, and drilling a little bit into the previous question, our concern in European regional solutions is data and data protection, and in that respect, GDPR is a good framework. Taking that as an example, how would that work in a post-Brexit scenario where the last thing we would want to have is a set of rules for the UK and then a set of rules for EU, because EU will think the rules in the UK are more or less stringent than the ones they have. That kind of discussion worries me, and therefore I'm already planning to set up a corporate in Spain to do my business outside of the UK.
Look, what we will try and do, whether it be on GDPR, or on chemical regulations, where data is incredibly important, you will know this, or many of you will know this, is to try and get to a place where, as a sovereign state that is entering into a free trade agreement, we want to make it as easy as possible for business to occur across the EU for the UK companies, and for Spanish and EU companies trading in the UK. And so I don't think these things are unsurmountable. There is no reason why you can't do business in Canada, right? There is no reason why you can't do business in other countries where there are free trade agreements with the EU. If there is a will, then we can make this absolutely work. And I think there are areas of that are uncontroversial, that we can already agree on and be able to move forward rapidly. So I don't see this as as long as the goodwill is there, as long as we enter this in a way where both sides, and I think it is there, by the way, that we want this to work, then I think we can move forward. When you will see the when we're going to publish the text, you will see that our position is as reasonable as we can make it. We're not asking for anything that is onerous on the EU in that sense. We just have to make sure that the EU comes to this from the perspective that we are an independent nation, and therefore that in itself is taken account of in the negotiation.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much, Minister. So, and the next question comes from Adam Munday from Melia, White House. This is a bit symbolic because were it not being for the COVID situation, we would be holding this breakfast physically at one of their hotels. So it's quite special for us to have Adam with us here. Adam, please go ahead.
Good morning, Minister. As Nacho said, I represent Melia Hotels International. We have 4 hotels in the UK and 2 under construction in the north of the UK. Tourism is incredibly important to my hotels and to all hotels in this country, as it is to your constituency where my parents live. Spain is the #1 market into our hotels in the UK. After COVID-19 and indeed Brexit, when do you think the UK will be an attractive proposition for tourists to return to the levels that we've seen in previous years?
Adam, thank you very much for your question. And I promise you, as soon as we are out of this, I will love to come and have a physical breakfast in one of your hotels. I hope you'll invite me back as the Spanish Chamber, or we could do just a sort of a visit. But look, you're absolutely right to highlight this. It's an issue that I am personally painfully familiar with, because I represent Stratford-on-Avon, and I think we are the fourth worst hit local authority in the country, because having the Great Bard, tourism is such a core part of our economy in the West Midlands. So what we're looking at the moment is all of our interventions have to, as I mentioned earlier, have to be reviewed in light of reopening the economy cautiously, steadily. The Prime Minister outlined the next two steps that we'll be taking, sort of 1st of June and then sort of 4th of July, when we think, if all goes well, if the R number continues to be sort of down, and we bear upon that curve, so that we're in a place that is safer than we are today, then we can begin to do that. What we've tried to do at Beis, Adam, is last Monday, we published the guidelines for different workplaces, work environments, rather than sectoral, of how you could work safely in sort of outdoor, indoor construction, in office, in retail, and so on. What we're going further and doing now is for each area, there's a task force that we bring in expertise, so that we can actually begin to do the detail of what the world would look like if you have to live with COVID-19, but open up the economy, including travel, leisure, and of course tourism, and the catering industry as well. All that work is happening as we speak. The important thing, of course, is to make sure with it, if you think about this, you need to have the test, trace, and treat infrastructure in place, which I'm confident that we will absolutely have that in place. Because essentially what you need to do, because I think it will be a terrible thing to have to come back to you on this platform and say to you, I'm really sorry, we're going to close down again because we got this. It would be existential, in my view, for the economy. We have to remain ahead of the virus until there is a treatment or a vaccine. The way you remain ahead of it is you've got to have that robust test, trace, and treat. I think as of last night, we've recruited 21,000 people to do the tracing, as well as the technology, which will complement that, because I don't think the technology can do everything. And of course, the testing is being ramped up even further. And so once we're in that place, then I think people will have the confidence to go back to taking staycations or international holidays, and hopefully going to Spain and Spanish people coming to the United Kingdom. And so all that work is happening as we speak. But I'm hoping that those dates of June, early June, and then early July, you'll begin to see a sort of return in July of, so June will be non-essential retail. July, we're hoping some restaurants and bars and others can begin to open safely as well.
Thank you. See you for breakfast.
Thank you very much, Adam. Now we have another question that has come in, and the post-Brexit minimum salary threshold that is being proposed, that we believe it's around 25,600. Do you believe it will affect recruitment within the NHS, and especially the care sector, where many people are considered non-skilled labor, as well as other traditional lower paid roles in the UK that consistently struggling for hiring?
Thank you for that question. So two things on that. One, our strategy as a government is to build a high wage, high skill economy. And so we will continue to drive up that wage level. The Prime Minister was the first in the country as Mayor of London to introduce a living wage for London. So he understands this better than anyone. And so we're going to continue to drive that up. The legislation that moved forward last night in Parliament allows us that, we talk about a lot in the UK and the media, you must have heard it before, the points-based immigration system. Now, if you look at the detail, the reason it's points-based, it needs to be flexible to the needs of the economy. So there are, the levers, the ability to flex the system to where we think the economy needs it, whether it be in our brilliant NHS or in our care sector or elsewhere, where because of that ability, we can have the lever to year on year to look at where we need the additional workforce, human resource, the most important resource, in my view, in the world. And that flexibility will allow us to deliver for the economy what it needs. Of course, the 25,600 is something that we took on through consultation. But as I say, because the system now will be one that we can control, we have within it the ability to flex the points to wherever we think the economy needs it, including in care and of course health.
Thank you very much, Minister. The next question comes around the preparations that Spanish and indeed British companies should have on the face of new circumstances in the new year. Do you think that these companies should work on a double WTO rule scenario and expect and be ready for that? Or otherwise, what do you think the broader shape of the agreement will be, and also in the scope of the preparations of the companies?
Well, as I said, look, the best strategy I think that we can deploy, and we spent many days and long nights thinking about this, and I absolutely wholeheartedly think it's the right strategy. Coming from, by the way, from the perspective of someone who is in business, and businesses can cope with anything as long as they know what that thing is transparency. So what you're going to see from us is a very transparent process, hence why we're publishing the legal text. So what we want to be able to do, and the Prime Minister said this, is after the June negotiations, is we're going to take stock, because we have to allow business enough time by the end of the year, because that's when we absolutely are leaving the European Union. The ability to plan ahead as to whether there will be a free trade agreement or a sort of Australia type relationship that is looser than a full free trade agreement. So we want to make sure we allow enough time, hence why the PM has said, he wants to make sure that in June we have a very good idea which way we're heading. Transparency is going to be critical. We will publish and we will put on gov.uk the guidelines for business. So please, log on, register with us, contact my officials after this call, and we'll get you connected so that you get regular updates. Because yes, it's fast moving, but we want to give business as much time as possible to plan ahead. What we can't do is just have this thing as a surprise to business at the last minute.
Thank you very much, Minister. Well, we have one last question that it touches upon, and something that you talked about earlier, that is the environmental considerations of the industrial strategy. The thing is that after COVID, we will be in a rebuilding mode, rebuilding our economy mode. What are the initiatives that the government plans to do to rebuild an economy that is more environmentally friendly?
And this is a critical question, because actually I want you to take the message to your members and anyone who's interested in investing in the UK of the opportunities that are going to emerge. Of course, the hosting of COP26 is going to be critical for our clean growth strategy, which has been long in the making. We've got an energy white paper that was due to be published end of March. Obviously with COVID, it's slightly delayed, but we'll still get that out. and you'll see opportunities in renewables. Obviously, we want to do more on offshore wind, onshore wind now as well, on solar, and of course nuclear will play a significant part of the portfolio mix in UK energy production. So all those areas will see big investment, whether it's in SMRs or AMRs, which is the future of nuclear. These are the small nuclear reactors, or the modular reactors, which is the real sort of technology of the future, or large nuclear as well, where we've got Hinkley, but obviously we need to do more if we're going to meet our net zero target by 2050. On carbon capture and usage and storage, we've committed in the budget to 800 million investment, and that will happen. The Prime Minister, I was with him on a call after the speech he made to the nation, the address to the nation. We spoke to a number of business leaders, and he made it very clear that this government is going to redouble its efforts to invest in infrastructure, both physical and digital, and in education. So we will deliver on, this is not going to be a government that's going to shrink inwards because of COVID-19. This is a government that's going to redouble its effort to effectively invest in infrastructure. You saw the announcement on HS2 in the sort of right at the almost at the peak of the COVID challenge that we were facing, has gone down extremely well with the construction sector, obviously, and other related sectors, including in the West Midlands. Combined authority, clearly a big deal for us there. But also there are other opportunities. If you look at life sciences, and I'm the life science minister as I am the construction minister, I'm the, I do defense, I do nuclear, and of course, professional and business services, which is 80% of the economy of the UK. But in life sciences, there's an opportunity in diagnostics where we're going to be focusing on building a much bigger, robust infrastructure in diagnostics, and an opportunity in vaccine production, large-scale industrial production of vaccine in the United Kingdom. And there are, literally, we're going through everything at the moment, looking at our industrial strategy of rebalancing our economy, making sure that we level up opportunities across the country. So every department has been tasked to look at all projects and what we can do to bring those forward, because I think it's important that we not just signal, although signals are important for business, as you all know, but also demonstrate with real decision making and leadership that the United Kingdom is going to be growing its economy through a dynamic investment in its infrastructure. Because the way you pay for the COVID challenge is you either raise taxes and go into austerity. That's not going to happen in the UK. We're going to grow the economy through investment in infrastructure and real drive for high level, high skill, high wage jobs in the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much, and thank you for an insightful speech and a lively Q&A that you have not dodged any questions. I would like now to pass on the word for the concluding remarks to Jerónimo Cruz, who is the financial director for UK and Ireland of Dragados, and very timely because you just mentioned construction and infrastructure, and as you know, Dragados is a large company executing civil works and construction company with a fertile presence in the UK. So Jerónimo, let me see if we can get you online. Okay, Jerónimo, here you are.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Jerónimo.
I would like to take this opportunity in the name of the Spanish Chamber of Commerce in the UK to thank Mr. Zahawi for sharing his valuable time and knowledge about the latest development regarding the Brexit negotiations and the impact of the COVID in these difficult and challenging times. I'm sure everyone has enjoyed this webinar, and your guidance will help us to clarify some of our doubts and try to minimize the impact of these risks in our companies. I also would like to remind all of participants that we will have the opportunity to meet Mr. Kevin Forster MP, Minister for Future Borders and Immigration, the next 2nd of June. And thank you all for your attendance today to this webinar. I hope you have a nice day.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, and with this we conclude. Thank you, and we will see you on June the 2nd for our webinar with Minister for Immigration and Future Borders, Kevin Foster. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.